Welcome to Learners Academy. This is Mona Bhatia. In this video, I'm going to explain the poem Nose versus Eyes by William Cowper. This is a satirical poem on the judiciary system, and it makes fun of blind justice without logic. It draws our attention to the lack of empathy as well, and also the common sense in the judgment. The poem has humor which cannot be missed. Now let's have a look at the poem. Nose versus Eyes by William Cowper, stanza 1. Between nose and eyes a strange contest arose. The spectacles set them unhappily wrong. The point in dispute was all the world knows to whom the said spectacles ought to belong. Now, there was a dispute between nose and eyes, and the spectacle was the reason of the dispute. And the reason was, to whom does the spectacle belong? We all know that we see through spectacles and the spectacles are meant for eyes. But there was a fight between nose and eyes that they wanted to have their claim on spectacles. Alright? So, Tongue was the lawyer and argued the case with a great deal of skill and a wig full of learning, while Chief Baron Ear sat to balance the laws, so famed for his talent in nicely discerning. This means Tongue was made the lawyer. It argued the case professionally, while the Chief Baron Ear sat in the court to settle the dispute. Why? Because it is famous for its sound and intelligent judgment. In behalf of the nose it will quickly appear, and your lordship, he said, will undoubtedly find that the nose has the spectacles always to wear, which amounts to possession time out of mind. So now the lawyer, who was the lawyer, the tongue was the lawyer. Now the lawyer started the case arguing in favor of nose, saying that nose always has to wear spectacles and the nose is the possessor of the or the owner of the spectacles. Therefore, spectacles belongs to nose. What argument was he giving? He said that from time immemorial, nose had been in possession of the spectacles. It is the nose which always makes the spectacle stand on itself. Rather, it was a very illogical argument by the lawyer, that is tongue. Though the spectacles are used by eyes, but they are kept on the nose for the eyes to see. So this was the case presented by the lawyer, though very illogical. Now let's move on to the stanza 4. Then holding the spectacles up to the court, your lordship observed they are made with a straddle, as wide as the ridge of the nose, in short, designed to sit close to it just like a saddle. Now, in this stanza also the lawyer shows the spectacles, shows everybody present in the court, and he argues that it has a straddle as wide as the ridge of the nose. It was designed to rest on the nose as a saddle is designed to for the horse, pressing the point that the spectacles are for the nose and hence nose is the owner of the spectacle. Again, would your lordship a moment suppose, this is a case that has happened and may happen again, that the visage or countenance had not a nose? Pray who would or who could wear spectacles then? Now again it presented another argument that was very funny and interesting. The tongue said and told everybody to imagine, just imagine if just in case there is an argument like this in future and there was a visage or a face without a nose, then who would wear the spectacles? Since every face has a nose, right? And suppose there is a face without nose, which is not possible. So now who will wear the spectacles then? So basically tongue presented yet more interesting and illogical argument in front of the court and just trying to press its point that the nose was meant for spectacles and spectacles were meant for nose. On the whole, it appears, and my argument shows, with a reasoning the court will never condemn that the spectacles plainly were made for the nose and the nose was as plainly intended for them. So now the lawyer concluded that the spectacles were plainly and only made for nose. As the court had heard the argument, the whole argument was only in favor of nose and reasoning, and there was no question that the spectacles are not for nose. It is only for the nose, and nose was meant for the spectacles. They were basically made for each other. So these were the arguments that were presented in the court by the tongue, that is the lawyer, in favor of the nose. All right. Then, shifting his side, as a lawyer knows how, he pleaded again in behalf of the eyes. But what were his arguments? Few people know, for the court did not think they were equally wise. Now what happened? Now, as every lawyer does it, it shifted its side towards eyes and it pleaded on behalf of eyes also. But whatever it said for eyes in the court now couldn't be convinced, because he had already made strong arguments in favor of nose. So the court now could not be convinced by the claims of the eyes. The arguments were not convincing as they were for the nose. So his lordship decreed with a grave, solemn tone, decisive and clear, without one if or but, that whenever the nose put his spectacles on, by daylight or candlelight, eyes should be shut. So now the judgment was passed. Lordship gave order with emotion, like a dead person, like without any sense, in a very formal and very dignified manner, without any second thought. That means without any if or buts, meaning very quickly, without even arguing, without giving anybody any chance, that the spectacles belongs to nose. And not only that, but that whenever nose wears the spectacles, eyes need to keep themselves shut. So this was so illogical. See, we know that spectacles are made for eyes, not for nose, but this entire poem is actually a satirical poem. It is aiming at the illogical judgment passed by the court sometimes, which doesn't see any logic but only goes by the book of law. Figures of speech of nose versus eyes. Here's a poem by William Cowper, and it's about a court case involving the eyes versus the nose. It's very interesting to note that the tongue is the lawyer and the ears the judge. The sense organs are personified in this poem. The poet uses human organs as characters in the poem. The poet has used many figures of speech, and I'm going to explain each figures of speech in the poem one by one. So let's start. The first line says, between nose and eyes a strange contest arose. You can see that I have already highlighted few words and few lines in either red color or it is in bold letters. So that means there is some figure of speech there, and I'm going to explain one by one. The first line has got inversion because the correct prose order has not been followed. When the prose order of the word in the sentence or of a poem or a prose is not correct, that figure of speech is called inversion. Alright, so the correct prose order should have been, a strange contest arose between nose and eyes. The poet does this inversion just to bring about the poetic beauty, basically. In the second line, you can see the letter S is repeated. The sound of S letter is repeated, so the figure of speech here is alliteration, and in the second line there is alliteration as well as repetition. The word is repeated twice, and W, sound of W, were, was and wall. So that is repeated here twice. So the figure of speech here is alliteration as well as repetition. In the fourth line, you can see the letter S is repeated 2 times, said and spectacles. The letter S is repeated, so the figure of speech is alliteration. You know what is an alliteration? Alliteration is basically a figure of speech where the sound is repeated in a sentence for pleasing or musical effect. Alright, now we come to second stanza of the poem. So the tongue was the lawyer and argued the cause. So there is a personification. Tongue is personified as a lawyer, and there is also repetition of the word the. So the figure of speech is repetition also. In the next line, with a great deal of skill and a wig full of learning. This is important, and you know what does it mean? Wig full of learning, there is an implicit comparison between the tongue who was acting as a lawyer to the judges or as a jury member who used to wear wigs when working in the court, and they are full of knowledge about laws and sections of the laws of the book, and here we find an indirect comparison between the tongue and those jury members who are full of learning. They wear wig as a style of clothes or attire prescribed for the members of the court. All right. So the next line has got alliteration as well as personification. The letter B is repeated twice here in this, because in barren and palins the letter B is repeated. So there is alliteration plus there is a personification, because the ear has been personified here, and there is also a metaphor here, because there is a metaphor because ear is compared to barren and it is referred to as lord in the quotes. Alright, so there is a indirect comparison between the ears and the barren of the coat. Alright, and the next line is so famed for his talent in nicely discerning. So there is an alliteration here, and also there is inversion. The correct prose order should have been so famed nicely in discerning his talent. This should be the correct prose order. So famed for nicely discerning his talent. That should have been the correct prose order, but you know the correct prose order is sometimes not followed in the poem to bring about the beauty. Alright, and sometimes to bring the rhythm in the poem. The next stanza, in behalf of the nose, it will quickly appear and your lordship, he said, will undoubtedly find. The correct prose order should be, it will quickly appear in behalf of the nose. Alright, so that's why there is an inversion. All here in the second line also there is an inversion. He said, lordship, you will undoubtedly find that the nose has had the spectacle always in wear. So there is again inversion in these two lines, and also you can see the word the is repeated here to bring about the repetition. Repetition is a figure of speech when the words are repeated in a sentence for pleasing or musical effect. Alright, now the next sentence, which amounts to possession, time out of mind, there is slight hyperbole or exaggeration in this time out of mind phrase, because it means from time immemorial, from very beginning. You see, it is an exaggeration that nose had spectacle always from time immemorial, but specs were introduced few hundred years back only, not from time out of mind, time immemorial, right? So there is a hyperbole or an exaggeration in this line. Now we come to this next stanza, and then holding the spectacles up to the quote, there is a repetition of the word the. Alright, and also there is a repetition of the sound the. So there is an alliteration as well as repetition, because the sound th makes the letter th, that makes the sound the, and that is repeated actually thrice in this line. Then the, but the word is also repeated, the is again repeated, so there is repetition as well as an alliteration. Now we move on to the next line. As wide as the ridge of the nose. So there is a direct comparison between the size of the straddle and the size of the ridge of specs by use of the word as. So whenever there is a direct comparison, it is called simile, and two unlike things are compared with the use of word as. So here the figure of speech is simile, and in the next line also designed to sit close to it just like a saddle. So the use of the word like here in comparing the saddle of the horse with the ridge of the specs which is made to sit on the nose makes this comparison again simile, because the word like is used, right? Because there is a direct comparison between two unlike objects, and also there is a repetition of the word two. Two word is repeated twice in this line. In the next stanza, we come to this third line, that the visage or countenance had not a nose. So here this highlighted word visage and countenance, they both are synonyms. So whenever there is a use of word which are similar in meaning, the figure of speech is tautology. And when two words or phrases in a sentence means the same thing, so here we can find there is a tautology. In the next line, pray who would or who could wear the spectacles then. This is very important line, because in this there are three figures of speech. First you can see that W is repeated twice in this sentence, and then the word who is repeated twice. So you can easily find out that there is an alliteration as well as there is a repetition. Plus you can see there is a question mark, so you can understand that there is a interrogation also. When a question is used instead of a statement, that figure of speech is called interrogation. It is not basically to get an answer from the audience or from somebody. It is basically to make them ponder and think and reflect back. Alright, so basically interrogation is used for us to think. Now in the next line there is no figure of speech, but in the next with a reasoning, you can see the court will never condemn. The letter W is repeated, so there is an alliteration, and in the line, and the nose was as plainly intended for them. There is a repetition of the sound the. TH makes the sound the, and that is repeated two times here. So there is an alliteration here. And then we come to the next stanza. Again the sound of H is repeated twice in this line, his and how. So there is an alliteration. And let's go to the last line of the paragraph, second last paragraph. For the court did not think that they were equally wise. The sound of W and the sound of TH, the, is repeated twice. So there is an alliteration here. Now first line of the last stanza. So his lordship decreed with a grave solemn tone. So grave and solemn, these two words are similar in meaning. So there is a tautology here. And now let's come to the last line of this poem. By daylight or candlelight, eyes should be shut. You can see the word light is repeated twice, so there is a figure of speech, that is repetition is there, and then sh sound, sh sound is repeated twice. That's why there is an alliteration also. So this was all about the figures of speech of this poem. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and understood the deeper meaning of the poem and also the figures of speech of this poem, Nose vs. Eyes by William Cowper. In my next video, I'm going to cover the critical appreciation of this poem. And in case you want to know all the poems of FYJC, you can subscribe to my channel. And there are many more poems and grammar exercises as well. Don't miss it. And if you want to watch more videos like this, you can go to my Learners Academy page and see what all is uploaded already. And Learners Academy is dedicated to serve all the students during lockdown period. That's all for today. Stay safe and have fun. And as always, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.